Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel L'Mitzvah Hashem. Today we will be learning Daf Kuf Samach Gimel Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on Kuf Samach Beis Amud Beis, 2 lines off the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch. Siman Shin Chav Zayin Sif Beis. Our learning should be a schos for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanasunu Bat Saru Bat Shivya, Ha'imdem Bein Bayam Bein Bayabasha, Hamakim Yerachem Alehem, V'Yitziam Yitzaru L'Rvacha Me'afelu La'Oira Mishibur L'Geula, Hashta Bagala V'Zman Kariv and Emar Amen. Our learning should be a schos. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over every member of Klal Yisrael in the schos of the limud HaTorah of Klal Yisrael. Okay, so we have a lot of words to cover today because if you take a look, there's quite a bit of Mishnah Berurah and Kuf Samach Gimel Amud Aleph, but it's not difficult. But without further ado, let's begin. We learned yesterday in Shin Chav Zayin Sif Aleph that you're not allowed to anoint yourself. You're not allowed to anoint yourself with oil for the purposes of refuah. So like the Mechaber said, Hachoshish b'masnav, if somebody has some kind of ache and he wants to take warm oil, let's say, and anoint his body with it, and that's going to take away the aches and pains, so you're not allowed to do that if it's muchecha milsa, if it's clear and obvious that what he's doing is being done for refuah purposes, and that's because of the gzera that you're not allowed to do things for refuah on Shabbos, gzera b'shem shchikas samamonim, which we're actually going to learn more about later today in this year. So to anoint yourself for refuah purposes is problematic when it's muchecha milsa that it's being done for refuah. However, if you're anointing yourself in such a way that people are not going to look at it and say that that's clearly being done for refuah. So I mentioned this yesterday in the shir. I asked a paisik, I said, you want to take olive oil and you want to apply olive oil to your chapped hands nowadays? He said it's not a problem. People use oil on their body. They use all sorts of different types of oils nowadays on the body all the time. And therefore it's not muchecha milsa that it's being done for refuah, even though you are doing it because your hands are chapped and your hands are bothering you. So really, it is being done for refuah, but it's not muchecha milsa that it's for refuah, and therefore it would be muter. That brings us to Sif Beis, 2 lines off the bottom, says the Mechaber. Sachin umemashmishin lahanasai al yedei shinui. You're allowed to apply oil to the body. You could anoint the body with oil and massage. Well, when people give a massage, they usually take some kind of a lubricant, so some type of oil, massage oil, and they massage the body. You're not going to massage the body when the body is dry and the hands are dry. You're just going to hurt the person that you're giving a massage to. So they use oil and to go ahead and facilitate the massage. Now, when you're giving a massage, that is not looked upon as something that's muchecha milsa, that is being done for refuah. It's being done for hana. It's pleasurable. It's relaxing. So, says the Mechaber, sachin, you could anoint the body with oil, umemashmishin, and massage the body, lahanasoi, for tainug, for pleasure. Al yedei shinui. However, you can't do it in the normal way. You have to employ some kind of a shinui. What's the shinui? Says the Mechaber, tahainu shesach umemashmesh biyachad. You have to do the anointing and the massaging simultaneously. So you can't go ahead and just anoint the body with oil and get the person all ready for a massage and then do the massaging. No, you take the oil and you put the oil on your hand and you start massaging with the oily hand. Or I guess you could take the oil and pour some oil on the body and right away start massaging. So the massage and the anointing has to be done together. Also, you should not do the massage with kayach. It shouldn't be a hard massage. It should be gentle. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in hay. Sachin umemashbishin. Hainu, this means shasachin b'shemen. You anoint the body with oil. Umemashbishin biyad al kol haguf, and then you massage the entire body lahana. And this is being done for pleasure. Ois cotton vav al yedei shinoi. You have to employ a shinoi. Why do you have to employ a shinoi? Says the Mishnah Berurah al yedei shinoi mikefi haragel lasos bechoil. You have to do it in a different way than this would normally be done during the week. She'ein darkei oz lasuch ulamashmesh biyachad. Because the normal way to do this is not to do the anointing and the massaging at the same time. Usually, they would first anoint the body, get it all ready, and then go ahead and start massaging. Ois cotton zayin, and the Mechaber said you cannot do this b'koyach. Why not? Dehu uvdin dechol. When you start giving a nice, rough, hard massage, that's not Shabbos appropriate. That's a weekday activity. That's uvdin dechol. Vayla kamam b'simishin chav chesif membeis b'manshe kasav dusham b'bir alacha de laharambam mutter kol shein mechaver lahavi yatzvay al yidei zeh lidei zeya. The Rambam also brings down that there could be an issue of zeya over here. It has to be that there's no kavana to work up a sweat from the body. Moving along to Sif Gimel, bottom line, Kuf Samach Beis Amid Beis, says the Mechaber, Ein megardin b'kli ha'oser lekach. You're not allowed to scrape the body. So even nowadays also they have these, I forgot what they're called. They have stones that are abrasive that people use to smooth out the body. So somebody has calluses on their feet or something. They have these abrasive stones or abrasive brushes that are used to scrape and smooth the skin. Says the Mechaber, Ein megardid b'kli ha'oser lekach. You cannot do this with a keli that is made for that purpose. Unless the reason you're doing it is because there is external dirt on the body. If somebody got mud caked on his body or excrement caked on his body, and now he needs to rub it off, then you could use this keli. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah, back on Kuf Samach Beis Amid Beis. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Ein megardin. What's wrong with doing this? Why is this a Shabbos problem? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Dehu k'uvdin dechayil. Again, this is an uvdin dechayil problem. This is weekday activity. Ice cut and test. You can't use bekli. You can't use the keli that is made for this purpose. Aval, however, yachal legar biyadav alabasar. You could take your hand and you could rub your skin very firmly, and you could scrape your skin that way. So it's not the actual scraping of the skin so much that's the problem. It's the problem that you're using the kli ha'oser lekach, and right away now, this looks like weekday activity. This is uvdin dechayil. It's aser on Shabbos. However, when you do use your hands, sheyizar shalayasa chabura, you have to make sure that you don't do this too roughly and you don't cause a wound of any kind, which would be aser on Shabbos. It's cut yud. You can't use the keli ha'oser lekach. Amrina Gemara, the Gemara says, if you have something that you do this scraping with, but you have a special Shabbos keli, maybe it has a fancy handle. So now it's the Shabbos scraper. It's not the weekday scraper. The Gemara says, then shari. Then it's already not uvdin dechayil. Then it doesn't look like you're out of Shabbos mode. You're in Shabbos mode. You're using the Shabbos one. Because of a Magen Avram, the Magen Avram writes, the Mizen Nagu Habasulois, from this Gemara that says that when it comes to scraping the skin, if you have a Shabbos scraper, it's okay. Says the Magen Avram, the Mizen Nagu Habasulois, from here the young girls picked up a custom, that they would have a Shabbos brush. The Shabbos brush had bristles that were made from a boar's hair, B-O-A-R. They were made from, or a davar acher, chazir. The bristles were made from boar's hair. Apparently, the boar's hair is very fine, and therefore it doesn't pull out hair. So they would make a Shabbos brush, and they would make it with boar's hair, and it would be miyuchad l'Shabbos. They wanted to take away two problems. One is you can't use a brush or a comb of any kind that's going to pull out hair, because that would be the malacha of geizes. It's an av malacha, it is a daraisa. So they made the bristles out of boar's hair with the intent that it should not pull out hair, and they made a special miyuchad Shabbos brush so that it shouldn't be a problem of uvdin dechayil. V'ayil el b'sayv siman shin gimel b'mishnah berurah is cut and pei zayin. The gambazeh ain't a mutter kiyam l'sakin by ma'ates ha'sa'aros lahashkivam. The Mishnah Berurah wrote earlier that even with this Shabbos brush, you still can't go ahead and really brush the hair firmly the way you would during the week. All you could do is gently brush the hair with this Shabbos brush. I'm going like this as if I have hair. You could just gently brush the hair with the Shabbos brush to kind of lay the hair down nicely. But you can't get the bristles into the hair and firmly brush the hair. Of a lisrite by Aser, that would be Aser. Ach bazeh, even with a Shabbos brush. Why? She'i efsher shelo yitlosh seyar. Because, says the Chavetz Chaim, you are definitely going to pull out hairs if you go ahead and you brush firmly, and it doesn't matter if it's boar's hair, the brush, or whatever it is, you're going to pull out hair. It's a psik ratio of geizes, and therefore it would be aser. It's cut in aleph. The Mechaber said you could use the keli that is made for scraping the skin if there's dirt on the skin. If you have tit or tzaya, you have mud or excrement on the skin, then you could even use the keli that's a miyuchad for that, and you can use it on Shabbos. Explains the Mishnah Berurah Katan Aleph to Sulay Mechsi al Yidei Agirud Ka'uvda Dechoil, because now it doesn't look like you're engaged in weekday activity. People get dirty on Shabbos also. So a person understands, he has dirt on his skin, he needs to remove it. There's no Isser Malacha involved in going ahead and using this keli to take off the dirt. It's optics. The optics are uvdin dechoil, but the optics are not uvdin dechoil if it's very clear while you're doing it. You're doing it because you have dirt on your skin. That obviates the uvdin dechoil issue. Moving along to Sif Dalet, says the Mechaber. Interesting issue. Lo yosach ragloi b'shemen v'hu b'soich haminol oy hasandal, and the Ramah puts in the word hachadoshim. What is this halacha? The Mechaber says, you're wearing a sandal, a leather sandal, or you're wearing a leather shoe, and maybe the skin on your feet are dry, or maybe the shoe is abrading your skin, and you want to use some kind of a moisturizer on your skin. So you want to take some oil, you want to take some good olive oil, let's say, and you want to smear it on your foot. Says the Mechaber, you cannot smear the oil on your foot while your foot is in the sandal or in the shoe. You can't stick your hand in and go ahead and apply oil to your foot. Now, the application of the oil to the foot itself, you're not doing this for refuah purposes. It's not muchacha milsa that you're doing it for refuah, unless you're using, let's say, shemen vered or something. But like this, there's no refuah problem over here. So what problem is there? The problem is that if you apply oil to your foot while your foot is in a sandal or while your foot is in a shoe, you're going to also, maybe inadvertently, but you're also going to put oil onto the shoe or onto the sandal. And now if the sandal and the shoe are made out of leather, you're applying oil to leather. Applying oil to leather brings you up against an av malacha of ma'abed. You're doing tanning. That's the tanning process. You take hides and you go ahead, you salt them, you soak them, you oil them, you use different kinds of chemicals to work the leather and tan the leather. So the problem over here is you're going to be applying oil to the leather, and that's going to bring you up against the av malacha of ma'abed. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Yud Beis, Lo Yosach, Tihine, Ibud ha'ar, working leather, tanning leather, who echad me'avois malacha, he says, one of the lamites malachas daraisa. The ibud hu, what is this malacha of ibud, of tanning? Immayleach ha'ar, if you salt hides, oishem abdoi b'sha'ar dvarim shederech la'abdoi, or you apply any other kind of chemicals or substances that are typically used in the tanning process. V'chein, or similarly, im doiris ha'ar baragloi, if you tread on hides, ad sheyiskashe, until the hides become firm. I don't know the physical facts of this, but apparently there are types of hides that when you work them with pressure and you keep on stepping on it, it will eventually turn it firm and hard. That is a form of preparation of the leather. It's a type of tanning. Or the opposite. Or you take the leather and you work it with your hands to soften it up. You stretch it. You make it nice and straight. You give it a nice shape. The way leather workers do. In all of these cases, chayiv, it's an issa daraisa, du teledes ma'abed. All of these kinds of activities that are part and parcel of preparing leather, they're all tailodos of the malacha of ma'abed. These are all isuri daraisa. V'chein, similarly says the Chavetz Chaim, in merakeh ha'ar b'shemen, if you soften the leather with oil, gam kemi inyan ibudhu. This is also a form of tanning, the chayav, and it would be an isur daraisa. I remember when I was younger, you would, let's say, buy a new baseball glove before you went to summer camp, and you would take, they sold in the sporting goods stores, they sold glove oil. But my father, Lushala, was in the leather business, and he told me you didn't need any kind of special glove oil or leather oil. You could take good old vegetable oil. You took oil and you smeared oil into the leather of the glove. You put a nice baseball in the glove. You closed the glove. You tied it up with a belt, and that would make the glove more pliable, so you could open and close the glove easier to go catch your baseballs. That would be a telada of tanning, of ma'abed. It would be in a daraisa. V'lachein, therefore, says the Chavetz Chaim, tzarich lizayer, you have to take care mitam zeh for this reason, shaloy limshayach minol chadosh b'shemen, that you don't apply any kind of oil to a new shoe. And that's why the Mechaber said over here, you can't put oil on your foot while your foot is in the shoe or in a new sandal, because you're going to end up applying oil to the sandal or to the shoe. Now, the Ramah stuck in the words hachadoshim, that this is only a problem by new sandals or new shoes. Why? Because they will still benefit from the application of the oil. It will still be called tanning. If it's an old broken-in shoe, it's not called tanning anymore. Ein ibud achar ibud. Once the leather is already tanned and worked and broken in, now there's no issue of tanning anymore. So it's really only on a new shoe. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, B'chayadam kasav d'chiyuv nami yesh bazeh. B'chayadam points out that to apply oil to the shoe, to the sandals, it is a daraisa. And now the Mishnah Berurah says, V'yesh oisrim gam b'minol yoshan. There are those that are machmir and say that even to apply oil to an old shoe is also problematic. Mishnah Berurah, it seems from the next Mishnah Berurah, is not going to go with that shita, but he does bring down such a shita. Ubefrat bezman hazeh, certainly nowadays, the nefishe ama aretz, where unfortunately there are a lot of people who weren't zoicha to learn chelik gimel in Mishnah Berurah, and they're amaratzim when it comes to Hilchos Shabbos, v'yavayu lahakel gam b'chadoshim. If they see people applying oil to old shoes, they're going to say, oh, so you're allowed to apply oil to leather shoes on Shabbos. And they're going to do it they're going to come home, they're going to have a new shoe that's stiff. Oh yeah, I saw Yankel last week, he was putting oil on his shoes, so I guess it's okay to put oil on the shoes. And he's going to apply oil to a new shoe, which is certainly a problem. Therefore nowadays, where unfortunately there's a lot of amaratzis, you should be machmir and not even apply the oil to old shoes. There's another reason why somebody might be applying oil to a shoe, and that is he wants to darken the color of the leather. So he wants to blacken the leather. Everybody would say that that's also because now you might be coming up against the Issa Malach of Tzeveya, of dyeing. Va'ata, now, says the Mishnah Berurah, now that he gave this lengthy primer into the Issa Daraisa of Ma'abed, Nachzar Linyonenu. Now let's return to the topic at hand that the Mechaber was discussing. Timishum Isser Ibud, because of this Malacha Daraisa of Ma'abed, Asru Gankein La'adam, Chazal also asked a person, Sheyisabev al Yidei Pu'ulasai, that he should cause through his actions, sheyisrakei ka'or, that leather should become softened. Therefore, asur lasach ragloi. That's why it's asur for you to go ahead and put oil on your foot when your foot is in the shoe, because by doing so, even though it's completely inadvertent, it's definitely a davar she'eino miskaven, but you're going to end up getting oil on the sandal, getting oil on the shoe. You're going to cause the leather to soften up, and you're going to be over on ma'abed. Ice cutting in Gimel, the Ramah stuck in the word hachadoshim, that this is only a problem by new sandals or new shoes, to be yeshana, because if they're old, su'ein by b'sham chash ibud, there would no longer be an issue of ma'abed. And this is where I'm saying that, well, I mean, even though the Mishnah Berurah is just coming to be mefarish the Ramah. I guess the Mishnah Berurah did tell us that we should be machmir. Nowadays, that there's a lot of amaratzas, we should be machmir and not even come up against ma'abed when it comes to old shoes. Over here, he's just explaining the Ramah. Why does the Ramah say it's only a problem by chadoshim? Because really by yeshanim, really by old shoes and old sandals, there is no longer an issue of ma'abed. Okay, now let's move along further in the Mechaber. 3 lines down, beginning of the line, says the Mechaber, Aval soch ragloi umanichoi b'minol. The isser that the Mechaber said until now was you cannot put oil on your foot when your foot is in the shoe or in the sandal. But now the Mechaber says, but I'll tell you what you could do. You could anoint your foot, you could oil up your foot, and then stick your foot into the sandal or stick your foot into the shoe. Even though by doing that, you are going to get the sandal or the shoe oily. But now you're not applying oil to the shoe or to the shoe or the sandal. You're applying the oil to your foot. It's only secondary that it's going to get from your foot onto the sandal or onto the shoe. That is okay. Continues the Mechaber, he says not only that, V'sach kol gufay, a person could anoint his whole body with oil, right? If he's doing something that's not mucha chamilsa, that he's doing it for refuah, so the anointing itself is mutter. A person could anoint his body with oil, and then misagel al gav ha'or, and then go roll around on a leather sheet, even though he's going to get the leather oily. But v'hu shelo yehi b'shemen hanishayf b'gufay shir kedei la'abdoi. So long as by doing so, you're not going to have an amount of oil that's going to come off your body, go onto the leather. It's an amount of oil that's considered kedei la'abdoi, the amount of oil that would normally be used as part of the tanning process. Afilu yesh by kedei l'tachtzachai mutter. Even if there's enough oil that it's going to make the leather shiny, but it's not the proper amount of oil to cause tanning, but it's going to make the leather shiny, that's still mutter. As long as you don't have kavana to go shine up the leather. So now, let's just pick apart the halachas that we just said in the second half of this sif over here. So the first thing that the Mechaber said was, you're allowed to apply oil to your foot and then put your foot into the sandal or into the shoe. On that, says the Mishnah Berurah, cut Yudalad Aval Sach, Kevin de Be'es Asicha Loinaga Hashemin Beha'or. In the opening of this Sif Dalid, when the Mechaber said you can't put oil on your foot when your foot's in the shoe or in the sandal, it was because you're actually going to end up applying oil to the sandal or to the shoe biyadayim. When you take your hand to go put the oil on your foot, you're also going to touch the sandal or touch the shoe. That's also. But if your foot is out of the shoe, then you could go ahead, apply oil to your foot. You're never going to touch the shoe or the sandal, and then put your foot in. So it's completely secondary that the oil is going to get onto the shoe or to the sandal. That's okay. The next halacha that the Mechaber said was a step further. Not only could you do that, you could anoint your body with oil and then roll around on a sheet of leather. It's really ultimately the same thing. You're not biyadayim applying any oil to the leather. You're putting the oil on your body. Then you're going to roll on the leather, and in that secondary fashion, you're going to be getting oil onto the leather. The Mechaber said that is okay, but he had a caveat. What was the caveat? The caveat was, how much oil are you putting on your body? How much oil is going to rub off your body onto the leather? If so much oil is going to rub off your body onto the leather, that is what the Mechaber calls the shir kedei la'abdoi, the amount of oil that would typically be used in the tanning process, then that would be aser. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'hu shelo yehei, dim yesh ba'ashem and shir kedei la'abdoi, aser after eina mechaven lozeh. If so much oil is going to come off of you and go onto the leather, now already explains the Aruch HaShulchan, now you're dealing with a psik reisha. Now it's a psik ratio of ma'abed. It's very nice that it's a davar she'eino miskaven. It's very nice that you're not doing it b'yadayim, but it's a psik ratio that you're going to cause ibud, and therefore that would be aser, I imagine, midrabanan. I don't see how this could possibly be this a daraisa. You're definitely doing it with a shinoi, right? But it is a darabanan, apparently it would be. Then the Mishnah Berurah said another halacha. Okay, so I told you that you could roll around on the leather. I gave you a caveat. You can't roll around on the leather if so much oil is going to rub off onto the leather that it's the sheer kedei la'abdoi. But what if it's less than that? It's less than the sheer kedei la'abdoi. But it's enough that it's going to shine the leather. Okay, says the Mechaber, that's also mutter. That's not a problem. The fact that there's a sheer kedei l'tzachtzachai, that's not a problem. But, he said, a caveat to that, as long as you have no kavana kedei l'tzachtzachai. If you have kavana to shine the leather, that's a problem. What problem is it? Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Cut into Zion, says the Mishnah Berurah. Afilu l'tzachtzachai. Di'im echaven b'gulgulai al gabe ha'or oy b'sach raglu yamanicha b'minol kedei l'tzachtzach ha'or al yedei hashemen. If there's enough oil that you're going to shine the leather, or there's enough oil on your foot that you're going to shine the shoe, and you have kavana to do that, that would be aser. What iser is it? Aser gzeira atu heicha shebeskavid la'abdoi. It's gzeira like this. Really shining the leather of the shoe, or shining the sheet of leather with oil, really there's no iser malacha over there. But the problem is that if you have kavana to shine the leather, then that means that you're applying oil to the leather, albeit in a weird way, right? You're sticking your foot into the shoe and you're rolling around onto a leather sheet, but you're applying oil to leather with the intent of improving the leather. Says the Mishnah Berurah, once we allow you to apply oil to the leather with the intent of improving the leather, we have to aser that as a gzeira, because we're afraid that if we allow you to do that, you might come to actually apply oil to the leather with the kavana of ma'abed, which is in Issa Daraisa. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, v'cholshkeit, certainly. If you're actually biyadayim applying oil to the shoe, afilu hashemen mu'at, even if it's a tiny bit of oil, and you have no kavana for ma'abed, you only have kavana for tzitzuach to shine it, the aser, that would certainly be aser. To go ahead and polish shoes with meruach, something that smears, shekarin vixen, wax. This is shoe wax. To go polish your shoes with shoe wax, kasab esevit teferes Yisrael, even if you did this through Amir La'akum to an Eini Yehudi, you wouldn't be allowed to have hana from those shoes until Motzei Shabbos, till the Zman of Kadesh Yeyasu, the amount of time it would have taken the guy to go ahead and polish your shoes. Why? Very simple. Because if you're using shoe wax to go ahead and polish your shoes, you're being over Yisirei Daraisa. What is a Daraisa? Memachek, Meruach. When you're dealing with wax, when you take the applicator and you smear on the thing of wax, you're smoothing out the wax. When you take it and you apply it to the shoe, you're spreading it and smoothing it over the shoe. These are Yisirei Daraisa. So if an Eini Yehudi does it, he's doing it for you. He's doing Malacha Daraisa on behalf of a Yisrael, B'Shvil Yisrael. It's also on Shabbos. It's also on Motzei Shabbos, Ad Kedei Sheyeyasu. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, you should know. When it comes to the question of how are you over the Issa Daraisa of Ma'abed, or if you're flaying and skinning an animal, you're flaying the hide off an animal. So that's also, it's one of the Lamites Malachas. They had to flay hides in the Mishkan in order to prepare the leather hides that were used as part of the ureas that were on top of the Mishkan. So this is an Av Malacha, flaying. What do you have to do in order to be over the Yisra Daraisa? The Gam Ke Malacha Daraisa. Who im yesh by shir k'dei lases kameya. We've mentioned many times, every Malacha Daraisa, every one of the Lamites Malachas has a minimum shear. you have to do a certain minimum shear in order to be over the Yisur Daraisa. What's the minimum shear of hafshata? What's the minimum shear of flaying an animal? What's the minimum shear of tanning leather? Explains the Mishnah Berurah Kidei Lasis Kameya, the preparation of the amount of hide, of klaf, of parchment, which comes from the hide of an animal. How the preparation of the amount that you would need to write a small amulet. Or the Inyan Isura, but when it comes to this Rabbanon, or possibly even an Issa Daraisa of Chatzi Shir, Afilu B'Koshu, even a minute amount is Aser, but you're not going to be Chayiv Korban Chatas if you do it B'Shoigig. HaMefarik D'Chustus Me'ala Klaf. Klaf, parchment. Well, step back. The hide of an animal is really composed of different layers. Now, we talk about klaf, when we talk about the part of the hide, right? Sefer Torah is written on klaf. Everybody knows parchment comes from the hide of an animal, but parchment is that thick. It's not the hide of the animal, right? It's only a part. It's one layer of the hide of the animal. The hide of the animal is comprised of multiple layers. Now, one layer is called the klaf. One layer is called duchsustis. So the Mishnah Berurah says, "Ma'mefarik duchsustis me'ala klaf." Somebody who separates the duchsustis from the klaf, and he explains, duchsustis hu chelik ha'orish al tzad habasar. The duchsustis is the innermost layer of the hide that's up against the flesh of the animal. Uklaf hu ha'chelik shel tzad haseir. The klaf is the outermost layer that's right under the animal's hair. If you split those layers of the hide, harezet terletes mafshit. That is a terlada of the Malachat Araisa of mafshit, of flaying. Okay, that ends Siman Shin Chav Zayin. Now we move along to a very, very fascinating Siman. Siman Shin Chav Ches, Din Chayla B'Shabbos, the halachas that govern how we deal with an ill person on Shabbos, Uboy Memtes Seifim, and here we have 49 Seifim, says the Mechaber Sif Aleph. Mi sheyesh lo meichosh ba'alma. Somebody who has aches and pains. He has a meichosh. He has something that's bothering him. He has a minor ache, a minor pain, a minor ailment. Guy has a headache. I'm not talking about a migraine. I'm not even talking about a cluster headache. I'm not talking about a horrible sinus headache. I'm talking about, that type of headache that you're not having the greatest day in the world. I've had a headache. You're working, you're functioning, you're fully functional. But it's just like, I wish this headache would go away. I've been walking around with this headache all day. Or a person has some aches and pains. His arthritis is acting up. So he has some kind of a pain. His tennis elbow is acting up. He has a pain. A simple pain. But he's fully functional. He's going around like a perfectly healthy individual. He went to shul, he ate by the kiddush, he had herring and kugel and challah. He's fine. He went home, he walked to visit guests, he came to mincha. He's mischazik v'oilech kibari. He's learning with his kids. He came to the daf yomi shir. He's chazari dirshu. So yeah, he's got something that's bothering him, but he's fully functional like a regular healthy person. Aser lasais lo shum refuah. He's not allowed to do anything for refuah purposes. So he can't just go pop a pill. Va'afil al yedei Yehudi. He can't even do something for refuah through the agency of an Yehudi. Why? Gzeira mishum shchikas samanim. Because, like we've mentioned previously, Chazal did not want us to do anything for refuah on Shabbos, because refuah very often entailed a lot of malacha, grinding up herbs to make medicinal potions and medicinal mixes, sometimes cooking something up. So there were isurei daraisa that were very, very, very often associated with things that were done for refuah. So Chazal said, meichosh ba'alma, a simple garden variety pain where you're perfectly healthy and you're functional and everything else, you're not allowed to do things for refuah. Gzeiri mishum shchikas samanim. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Aleph, meichosh ba'alma v'hu mischazik. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, and these are very, very critical Mishnah Berurahs that we're going to be learning here. that are negeya very often. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, mechish ba'alma v'hu mischazek. If it's a simple garden variety ache and pain, then you can't do refuah. Says the Chavetz Chaim, dim koiv le'tuva. But if he's in a lot of pain, v'chala kol gufay al yedei zeh, so that it's affecting the entire body. In other words, guys, when somebody is in serious pain, I mean, even a migraine headache. A migraine headache is chayla kol haguf. It affects the entire body. You can't think, you want to wrap your head in a towel, you don't want any light getting to your eyes, you don't want anybody to make a sound, you don't want to get anything to your ears, you don't want to move. That's called chayla kol haguf, and that's kov le'tuva. Oy shenafal mishkav, or if he's bedridden. Now the poskim all say bedridden doesn't necessarily mean bedridden. Bedridden in this context means that you're not functional. You're not functional. You come home from shul, you have a splitting headache, your wife says, Pliny is making a kiddush. You want to come to the kiddush? I'm not going anywhere. I'm getting on the couch and I'm not getting anywhere. So it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily restricted to bed, but I'm not functional. I'm just not functional. At least I'm not functional close to my ordinary functional levels. I can't comport myself in the way I normally would when I'm fine. I am clearly diminished because of this pain. Because of this headache, I am clearly diminished. I can't function. Doesn't mean I can't do anything, but I certainly can't function in a normal way. I'm not mischazik v'holich gebari. That's what this means. Oy shenafal mishkav. Av she'ein boy sakana, even though you're not in danger, right? You go to the doctor, you meet the doctor at shul, I feel horrible. Well, guess what? You have a raging sinus headache. Doc, am I in danger? No, you're not in danger. You're not in danger. Just you're going to feel miserable for the next, for the next 8 hours. You might feel totally miserable. Are you in danger? No, you're not in danger. So says the Mishnah Berurah, Av she'ein by sakana, even though this person is not in sakana, mutter lasais b'shviloi refuah, you're allowed to do refuah for him. He could take medicine. If there's something that you could do to help him, you could do it to help him. As long as it's refuah she'ein ba malacha. You can't do something that involves maleches iser. But you could take a Tylenol, you could take Advil, you could take antibiotic, you could go ahead and use nasal sprays, you could take a decongestant, you could, if there are things that you could do to help yourself, if there are things that somebody could do to help you that are for refuah purposes, they're muchacha milsa that they're for refuah purposes. But it's mutter anyway, even though you're not in danger. But it's because you're kav le'tuva. You are significantly impaired, and therefore you're allowed to do things for refuah. Ukahid Siman Shin Chav Zayin Sef Aleph, you could anoint yourself with oil. Ukahagavna, but even though these are things that normally we would answer because of Gzeri B'Shem Shchikas Samanim, not if it's kav le'tuva and it's nafal mishkav. Val Yidrein Yehudi, and through the agency of a non-Jew, through the agency of an Eini Yehudi, mutar lasei safila malacha gemura. You would even be allowed to ask him to do malacha daraisa. So if somebody has a serious headache, somebody's really not feeling well, and you have to ask an Eini Yehudi to go to the drugstore and get a bottle of Motrin, you could send him to the drugstore to get a bottle of Motrin. It's a mira la'akum, it's a malacha daraisa, but it's a mira la'akum, so it's a darabanan. Go ahead, you could ask him to go do malacha daraisa. You're not allowed to do refuah if it's only a mechush ba'alma. Even though it's something like popping a Tylenol, which has no iser malacha there. You're not allowed to do it. If it's a mechush ba'alma, you're not allowed to do it. People are very, very kal when it comes to this, and they shouldn't be. Think twice before you do something that's for refuah. I suffer very often from reflux and from heartburn, right? So it depends. You want to pop a Tums. It depends on the level. If it's minor, it's just a minor thing, it's okay. You could avoid it. Sometimes you're burning up. That's not mechush palma. That's already, it gets to the point where you're talking not fully functional. because you can't think, you're burning up. So then, go ahead, take time, stick my lantern, do whatever you have to do. But think twice before you do something for refuah. Don't jump and say, oh yeah, I have a minor. No, if it's a mechush pa'alma, refuah is aser. Even through Amir Lakim, this is a problem. You can't ask an Eina Yehudi to do an Isid Rabbanon for refuah if it's just for mechush pa'alma. Kevichu rak mechush pa'alma. Okay, now let's go to a very, very important sif beis. Says the Mechaber. It's that sun again. I have to remember this time of year, this time of day, I have to adjust the window shades. Okay, sif beis. Says the Mechaber. Mi sheyesh lo chayli shel sakana. If somebody's a chayli sheyesh by sakana, if somebody is chas v'shov lo aleinu, somebody is ill and he's in danger. Mitzvah lechalil alav es haShabbos. You hear this, Rabbi Yisai? It's a mitzvah to be mechal Shabbos for him. It's not a b'di'eved. It's not an oivei. It's a mitzvah lechalil alav es haShabbos. It's a mitzvah to go be mechal Shabbos for him. If he's a chayla, sheyesh by sakana. V'hazoriz harei zeh meshubach. And the one who jumps up with greater alacrity and runs faster to go be Mechal Shabbos for the Chol Sheyesh by Sakana, Harei Zeh Meshubach. We praise him. V'hashoyel, and Le'idach Kisa, if somebody says, I don't know, I gotta ask a Shaila, let me go find the Rav, I hope he's home. V'hashoyel, Harei Zeh Shoyvech Damim. He's a murderer. So the Shoyel, if this Chol Sheyesh by Sakana Chas V'Chalila dies, while this guy was going to ask the Rav Shaila, you should know he's a Ritzeach. Harei Zeh Shoyvech Damim, he's a murderer. So again, what did the Mechaber say here? You're dealing with a Chayla Sheyesh by Sakana. You're dealing with somebody who's ill and he's in danger. It's a mitzvah to be Mechal Shabbos. The one who's zar is to be Mechal Shabbos, Harei Zeh Meshubach. Somebody who stops to think and ask a Shaila, he's a Shoyvech Damim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Katan Daled mitzvah pirish lases le refuah. It's a mitzvah to go do refuah for him. Now, be careful with that. In other words, it's not a mitzvah to go do anything to be Mechal Shabbos for somebody who's a Chol Sheish by Sakana. It has to be something that has to do with refuah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Atam, the reason is because the Torah HaTorah tells us you're supposed to live by the guidance of the Torah. You're not supposed to die because of the strictures of the Torah, except for the Gimel Chamurais. But you know, the halachas of the Torah aren't there to kill you. They're there v'chai b'hem. You're supposed to live by them. V'lo yish b'hem. Ois kat hey v'azariz. Ayin l'kamam b'siv yud beis v'agasham v'amash shenichta sham v'mishnah berurah. V'ayin b'yoridei so yisib kuftan hey. Now, what's the Mishnah Berurah's point here? The bo'inon. When we say that it's a mitzvah to go be Mechal Shabbos for the Chol Sheish by Sakana, when we say that the Zariz is Meshubach, what are we talking about? The Be'inon Shetei Refuah Yadua La'anoshim. It has to be that you're doing something that makes sense. It has to be that you're doing something that's a known refuah, right? So this person needs an injection, and it's known that this injection, this medication, is a refuah. Yes, you could go be Mechal Shabbos. But some clown will come into the house and say, oh, what? This Chol Sheish by Sakana, he has this and this and that. Quickly chop up 6 teaspoons, do teichen on 6 teaspoons of parsley, and go make a fire and boil up water, because he's a medicine man, and we don't know that this is a refuah, and he's not a mumcha, and it's not proven that this is a refuah. We're not going to say just go ahead and be Mechal Shabbos. To be Mechal Shabbos, it has to be that we know that you're doing something that makes sense. Don't not just do whatever you want. The person who stops to ask a shayla the shoyvich damim. Pirish explains the Chavetz Chaim oisay issue mischaseid. This person is being fafrumt. He doesn't want to go be Mechal Shabbos. V'yarei l'chal Shabbos. He's afraid to be Mechal Shabbos. B'choyle kazeh. When we're dealing with such an ill individual that he's a chol sheish by sakana. Kim al yedei moire. He wants to wait for a psak halacha. Harei shayvich damim. He's a murderer. Because while he's busy going knocking on doors to go ask a shayla, the chayla will get more ill and weaker. He's in danger of dying. He's in danger of death. So don't go ahead and waste time. Also, the Yerushalmi is a little bit different. The Lashon of the Yerushalmi is that somebody who goes and asks a shayla, this is a disgraceful situation. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, what does that mean? Pirish. If a person is going to ask a shayla of what to do by a chayla sheyesh by sakana, whether or not he should be b'chal Shabbos, it's a disgraceful situation. You know why? Because it means that the Rav of that town is not a good Rav. The Rav didn't do his job. This is a halacha that he should have been careful to teach to the whole town, so that everybody should know, and they shouldn't have to come ask a shayla. So the job of the Rav, one of the main jobs of the Rav, he should teach right away at the beginning. He should teach, Rabbi Sai, there's a chayla sheyesh by sakana, don't come to me to ask shaylas. Do what you got to do for refuah, even if you have to be mechal Shabbos Yisuri Daraisa. Go ahead and do it and ask later. What if the chayla says, no, I'm not going to let you be mechal Shabbos for me? Or a case that I experienced years ago, the chayla says, I'm not going to the hospital. I'm not getting in the car. I'm not being mechal Shabbos. He's a chayla sheyesh by sakana. An old man fell and he banged his head, and they're worried about him. You know, they have to give him a CAT scan. They have to check out if there's any damage. Right? No, I'm not getting in the car. I'm not being mechal Shabbos. It says the Mishnah Berurah, koifin oisai. You force him. Umedabrum alibai. Try to talk to him gently and persuade him. Shu chasidu shel shtus. And explain to him that what he's doing is chasidu shel shtus. This is not a time to be mischased. This is a time to go do what you got to do. Mishum pikuach nefesh. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rosh should send. Yeshua's refuahs parnasim shaduchim to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the BS called Tzedek b'mherav Yameinu. Amen. Be well.